Well, here we are again, in the middle of nowhere. I have to apologise for these happy birds. They don't really care. It's spring. It's their breeding season. It's a period of abundance for them. They're going to make the most of it. And it's interesting to see that as human beings we try to separate ourselves from the animal and insect and bird environment, when the reality is we're just part and parcel of another organism. So today I'd like to talk about something a little bit which is becoming a little bit more important, and that is capitalism and the role of capitalism in the post-scarcity economic world. Now, capitalism is a very simple concept. It's about private investment for private profit. It's not about looking after the needs of a community. It's basically about looking after the needs of the people who invested in a particular project. That's what capitalism is about. It's about private investment for private profit. You can have individuals, families, family trusts, huge conglomerations which are publicly listed on the world stock market. So there are many ways that capitalism works. Now, capitalism has been around for generations, thousands of years, and it is interlinked with abundance. That's right, it's interlinked with abundance. In order for private investment for private profit to be a viable economic system, you need abundance. You can have that abundance because of natural resources. You can have that abundance because of conquest and colonisation. And we saw the West, through disease and technological innovation, be able to conquer and colonise vast tracts of planet Earth. And what that allowed them to do is strip the conquered areas of their resources and use those resources for the benefit of the conquering country. For example, the Egyptians 4,500 years ago, when the Great Pyramids were beginning to be built, were short of labour. So they went into Libya and then into Nubia, conquered those people, brought people across as slaves to work on the pyramids so they could be completed. So they were faced with a problem. The problem was that there was no abundance. They needed to create abundance. Now, abundance has been created historically through slavery. We saw with colonisation that human beings became commodities. They could be bought and sold on the open market, and then those human beings were used to cultivate areas which had been conquered from First Nations people. So capitalism flourished while there was abundance. And that abundance came at the cost of the genocide of populations, the destructions of civilizations, the slaughter of tens of millions of people. That's what that abundance was created from. Today in the 21st century, capitalism reigns supreme, especially corporate capitalism. Private investment for private profit reigns supreme. It is the dominant economic force around the world, and it's the dominant economic force because there's been a period of abundance through globalization and corporatization. What this means is that corporations have been able to extend their empires. But as the 21st century moves on, we are faced with four exceptionally important problems, and irrespective of whether a few billionaires can go a few thousand metres up into the sky or not, the fact is that we're stuck here on planet Earth. The fact is we have finite resources on this planet. Irrespective of technological innovation and scientific advancement, we still have finite resources. The fact is that human beings have, over the last few centuries, changed the climate on this planet through the unbridled development of capitalism. The climate emergency we face now has much more to do with private investment and private profit than anything else. It's the fact that the world is dominated by an economic system which is based on the creation of ever-increasing profits, irrespective of the human, social and environmental costs, is what has led to the climate emergency. Australia, as part of that network, has a number of issues, and a lot of those issues have been highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of those significant issues is access to labour, access to people. An era where slavery no longer exists in the majority of the world. The fact is we do have a slavery in this country. It's called wage slavery. What has happened is your ability to survive and earn an income is directly linked to your ability to be productive, your ability to be able to provide labour to other people in order to maximise profits. So let's look at the 21st century. What are the central issues? The central issue is the climate emergency, which to a significant degree has been created by unbridled capitalism, which is dominated by corporations and shareholders. The second issue is finite resources. The third issue is the fact that we have an ideology which is so pervasive that when discussions occur regarding change or even reform, people keep saying there is no other way. There is no other way apart from unlimited growth. There is no other way. Obviously there's other way. Human beings have always been able to survive, and they've been able to survive because they've been able to understand and work hand in glove with the environment they find themselves in. So you've got, as we move from a period of abundance to scarcity, and this is being driven to a significant degree by increasing population growth. So when we add the four horsemen of the apocalypse, see them riding towards us, the climate emergency, finite resources, increasing population growth, and the domination of a planet by an ideology based on growth for growth's sake, irrespective of the human, social and environmental costs, we see that we are moving from a period of abundance to scarcity. And although there are elements in society that are talking about developing space and exploiting resources on other planets, the fact is that we do not have the technological know-how innovations to exploit anything to any significant degree outside our own planet, planet Earth. And as planet Earth is coming under increasing stress because of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, increasing population growth, finite resources, the domination of the planet by corporate capitalist ideology, and the climate emergency, we find that we are going to move from a period of abundance to a period of scarcity. So how does capitalism, private investment for private profit, deal with the issue of scarcity? The fact is, the climate emergency, which affects every human being on the planet, and the COVID-19 pandemic, which affects every human being on the planet, have highlighted once and for all the limitations of a capitalist ideology, the limitations of capitalist modes of production, capitalist modes of thought, capitalist culture, capitalist modes of organisation are counterproductive in an era of scarcity. Now, historically, it is important to remember that there have always been periods of abundance and scarcity in human civilizations. And those human civilizations that have been able to deal with changing circumstances are those civilizations that survive and ultimately prosper. If anybody's been in Central Australia, you will see how harsh the environment is, and I'm sure you and I would last 48 hours before we died in that environment because we have no association with that environment. But people lived in that environment for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, and they coexisted with their natural environment. And their economic basis was not based on the concept of private investment for private profit. Their economic basis was not based on competition. Their economic success was not based on the fact that they were willing to rape the land and the resources, not thinking about tomorrow as we do today. They survived and prospered because they evolved an economic system which was based on cooperation. So if you were part of a tribe or a clan and you went hunting, and let's remember, a hunter would only succeed about 1 in 3 times they went out to hunt, while 80% of the food source came from roots, berries, fruits, small animals. If you were successful in your hunting, you would have to share that with the other members of the community. It was not your personal property. It was a matter of cooperating and sharing so that the whole organism, the whole clan, the whole tribe continued to survive. And obviously various rules, regulations, laws were enacted to ensure the survival of the tribe as well as the survival of individuals within that particular group. If we come across to the 21st century in the period of scarcity, we have exactly the same issues. If we continue on the road of private investment for private profit, which is capitalism, we will end up in civil dislocation, wars between sovereign nation states, civil wars within societies, dislocation, and death at a scale we have not seen for a very long time, because today we are totally dependent on technology. With 70% of the world's population living in cities ranging from 30 million down to about 3 or 4 million, you can see that we are totally dependent on technological innovation and a steady energy supply in order to survive. There are no productive forces in cities in terms of food production. Maybe people do a little bit of, gardening in their backyards. But if push comes to shove, we only have enough food for 2 to 5 days within the major cities if the links are cut to the country. So mass starvation can readily become an issue. Although we supposedly live in a democratic society, the fact is what COVID-19 has demonstrated is the power that is wielded by the state in times of a health emergency and all other times, because all those so-called constitutional arrangements to protect our rights and liberties really don't exist, especially in Australia, where the Constitution is basically an agreement between the states and the central government. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the residual power still left in the hands of the states in their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So as we move from a period of abundance to scarcity, and we are not talking about a disaster, a natural disaster or mass starvation, but that gradual shift from corporate capitalism to something else, to an economic system based on cooperations, cooperatives and collectives. As we move from that, we need to make major changes. Not major changes in what we produce, but major changes in terms of what we consume, what our expectations are, how we survive. And those major changes range from the type of food we eat, to the political structures we have, to the internal infrastructure we have, to the fact that unless major changes are made over the next 20 to 30 years, not greenwash changes, which herald in an era of green corporate capitalism, but changes which ensure that we increase cooperation, both at a personal level, at a community level, at a state level, and as a sovereign nation state, and as a member of international community. That competition by itself is not relevant in a post-scarcity period, because all it does, it gets people fighting against each other for limited resources, and that ends up in the creation of extremely authoritarian states where a small clique has absolute power over life and death. And if we don't deal with the situation now, or begin to deal with the situation now, that is what we will be seeing, is the creation of organisations and institutions which sustain their existence through the destruction of other people's lives and property, as we saw during the colonisation process. But this is will not be a colonisation of the west of the east, or the west of the Americas, or the west of Australia or Asia. This will be a colonisation, an internal colonisation process, where those who currently wield power, exercise power, will use that power in order to maintain their power at the expense of the rest of the community. If that means mass starvation, if it means civil war, if it means mass arrests, if it means the suspension of any liberties that you may enjoy, that is the price that will have to be paid unless we move from a period of abundance to a period of scarcity in a rational manner. And that rational manner is based on the creation of cooperatives and collectives which cooperate in order to satisfy basic human needs. That rational response is about us determining what we produce and how we produce it, and changing the economy from one based on growth for growth's sake to one based on the satisfaction of real, not manufactured human needs. Because in a period of abundance where capitalism reigns supreme, where corporate capitalism reigns supreme, it doesn't matter whether we produce for manufactured human needs, not real human needs. As long as there is growth, there is profit. But in an era of scarcity, when resources are scarce, human beings are many, the environment and the land and the oceans are becoming more and more exploited and polluted. Unless we are willing to turn back that clock, what we will see is the creation of societies around the world which are basically there to maintain their own integrity and power at the expense of the people they rule. Now, I'm not talking about this happening in the next 2 or 3 years, but I'm talking about things happening over a period of time. I'm talking about things happening over a number of decades. But like the response to the climate emergency, which has been slow, we also need to respond rapidly, globally, as societies and communities, to the transformation of our society from one based on abundance to one based on scarcity. The rules that apply for a society based on abundance do not apply for a society based on scarcity. The rules are different. Cooperation instead of competition. An economic system based on the satisfaction of real, not manufactured human needs. Democratisation of society. We need to look back to the past and see how human beings have been able to adapt to changes. Those societies which adapt, survive and prosper. Those that don't adapt are wiped off the pages of history. Ultimately, whether you want to or not, what happens ultimately depends on you and the attitude you take. Whether you continue to eat meat, whether you continue to acquire commodities, whether you continue to invest in organisations, possibly through your superannuation funds that are basically helping to create the climate emergency. ultimately we can all make decisions, small personal decisions, which can change what's happening in our society. Whether that occurs or not is up to you. If you're interested in meeting like-minded people, I suggest you join Public Interest before Corporate Interest. You can download the application form from pibci.info. We are not just a political party, we are much, much more. We are a social and community-based organisation that wants to make that transition from a period of abundance to a period of scarcity so that everybody will be able to survive and prosper.